What if I told you that the act of choosing a t-shirt or a dress could be silently sabotaging your spiritual, emotional, and financial life? No, it's not superstition. It's a warning that comes from one of the men most venerated and feared by the invisible powers, Padre Pio, stigmatized friar who spoke with the angels and also with the souls of the purgatory. For decades, millions of people have searched in his words comfort and wisdom. But there is a warning yours that has been ignored, silenced, or perhaps buried by those who do not want it. Let the truth be known. You should not wear bright red clothing. Why? Because according to Padre Pio, that a seemingly innocent choice can be a door open to energies, negative spiritual conflicts, illnesses, and even poverty. Imagine for a moment that you are getting dressed in front of the mirror. Everything seems normal, but spiritually you are wrapping yourself in with a vibration that the Padre Pio himself considered dangerous. Does that sound exaggerated to you? Then stay, because what you are about to discover not only challenges modern logic, but also reveals a forgotten code that unites color, soul, and destiny. Throughout this video, we will unravel biblical secrets, disturbing stories, and scientific discoveries that confirm what many saints already they knew. That the clothes you wear not only cover your body, they also speaks with the spiritual world, and it all begins with a man who could see beyond of the veil. Throughout the history of the Church, few characters have provoked as much wonder and devotion as the Padre Pio of Pietrelcina, a humble Capuchin friar born in Italy in 1887, which happened the most of his life in prayer, confession, and voluntary suffering. But what did truly unique was not his austerity, but the gifts supernatural that he possessed. Bleeding stigmata that never healed, mind-reading, Marian apparitions, bilocation, spiritual battles against demons. Padre Pio lived between two worlds, with one foot in the land and another in it invisible. And it was precisely from that spiritual world that came one of his most disconcerting warnings. The clothes we wear can attract blessings or misfortunes. Among its many advice to the faithful, one stands out for its rarity and forcefulness. Not to wear clothes of intense red color, especially scarlet or crimson. For him, that color was charged with a vibration dangerous. It was not only a symbol of passion or vanity, but also a spiritual antenna that resonated with forces contrary to light. Red is not for those who they seek God. It is the sign of combat, of fire that consumes and the soul that burns without peace. He would have saying in one of their conversations, spiritual. It was not a superficial judgment. Padre Pio claimed that certain people, by constantly wearing red clothing, were left spiritually unprotected, more vulnerable to temptation, anger, and even illness inexplicable. Interestingly, many of those observations that did during the confession. Sometimes, without the penitent speaking, he already knew what kind of clothes they used, what colors predominated in his closet, and how that affected his soul. His vision transcended the physical. But where from? Permission, that perception? Was it just spiritual intuition, or was there a deeper foundation, perhaps millennial, which connected colors with celestial and demonic realities? The answer begins to reveal itself when we look towards a text much older than any fashion treatise, the Bible. Long before the psychology of the color out studied by modern scientists, the Holy Scriptures already assigned a deep meaning to each shade. In the Bible, the colors were not decorative, but coded messages from the heaven. Every garment, every curtain of the temple, every thread of the tabernacle, everything was imbued with symbolism. One of the most mentioned colors in the Old and New Testament is precisely the scarlet. But far from representing beauty or elegance, this intense red hue is associated with sin, the vanity, and the spiritual prostitution. In the book of the Apocalypse describes the great harlot riding on a beast. She was arrayed in purple and scarlet and adorned with gold, precious stones and pearls, and in his hand was a golden cup full of abominations. Revelation 17:4. It is no coincidence that this color is linked to the spiritual corruption and seductive power of evil. Scarlet, according to the prophetic vision, represents a visual attraction that hides an internal destruction. On the other hand, the white appears as a symbol of purity, redemption, and spiritual victory. In Revelation, the redeemed wear white robes. In Isaiah 1:18, God says, "Though your sins be like scarlet, like the snow will be whitened. Although be red like the crimson, they will become like white wool." You see the connection. What is deep red needs to be transformed into target to reach the restoration. And there's more. In the book of Numbers 15:38-40, God commands the people of Israel to place a blue cord in their garments as a reminder of his commandments. Blue in this context symbolizes obedience, divine protection, and spiritual connection. So why would we ignore these messages today? If the scriptures teach that garments have a purpose beyond of the physicist, why we would assume that colors don't matter in modern spiritual life? What Padre Pio said was not a medieval superstition. It was a spiritual truth that aligns with the deepest biblical codes. And while many discard this as irrelevant, there is who have felt in his own body and soul the invisible weight of a poorly chosen color. We live in a world where it visible dominates our decisions, but there are forces, subtle ones, that operate under the surface, and the color red is one of the most powerful among them. From a scientific perspective, multiple studies have confirmed that red is not a simple visual stimulus. Activates specific regions of the brain associated with danger, alert, and aggression. It raises the blood pressure, increases the heart rate, and creates a sense of urgency, even anxiety. It is no coincidence that traffic lights, warning signs, and emergency alarms use this color. In sports contexts, it has been observed that athletes who wear red often display a more aggressive attitude and also provoke defensive reactions in their opponents. The human body reacts to red with a fight-or-flight response. But what about the soul? Padre Pio did not need laboratories to perceive this. Your spiritual discernment allowed to identify what many they couldn't see yet. Red is a combat vibration. And when it becomes in part of our daily routine, especially in our garments, we tune into that same frequency. Not just talking about aesthetics, we're talking about an energetic and spiritual attunement. Just as an antenna captures certain waves, red clothing seems to amplify energies linked to conflict, impulsiveness, and disharmony. Some it feel like irritability without apparent reason. Others like a state of permanent restlessness. Red, too, has been historically used in rituals, pagans, sacrifices, and invocation ceremonies. In many ancient cultures, it was the color of fire, blood, and of call to the world below. Could it be then that by dressing in red without knowing it, we are invoking a form of fire invisible in our life? Could it that explains why some people, when changing the color of their clothes, feel a relief inexplicable? The more shocking answers will come in the next few minutes, because what seemed like a spiritual theory is being backed up by life-changing testimonies. Sometimes, a simple decision can change everything. It's not magic, it's spirituality in action. And when it comes to the color red, there are people who claim having undergone a transformation so deep that it is difficult to explain with words. One such case is that of Lucia, a 46-year-old woman who suffered from constant anxiety, insomnia, and a feeling of discouragement that no doctor could explain. Her routine included therapies, medications, and long nights of anguish. Until a day, while I was listening to an old interview about the tips from Padre Pio, a phrase pierced the soul. The clothes speak, and some they cry out for help without you it you know. Lucia checked his closet and noticed something disturbing. The most of her clothes were red. Dresses, blouses, scarves, even her underwear. Without after thinking about it too much, he decided do a test. Put away everything red and started getting dressed with white, light blue and soft green tones. In less than 3 weeks, something changed. His body felt lighter, his mind calmer, and his soul more at peace. It wasn't a coincidence. She wasn't the only one. Roberto and Elena, a couple who were going through financial problems, constant arguments, and a tense family atmosphere, met with the same message while they saw a documentary about spiritual symbols. Elena noticed that, interestingly, she always used a red coat to go to work. Roberto, for his part, had several shirts of that same color. Inspired by the curiosity, or perhaps because of the desperation, they decided replace red for neutral and soft colors for 40 days. The result? Discussions. They stopped. They appeared new job opportunities. The atmosphere at home became more harmonious. It was as if a heavy cloud had been lifted from above us. Elena said, "The cases are multiplying." A young woman student called Marta stopped wearing scarlet clothes after experiencing nightmares recurrent. To the few days of doing the change, his dreams became peaceful, even inspiring. "I felt like a dark presence surrounded me every night, and it disappeared when I changed my colors," he wrote in his testimony. "The funny thing is that none of them I was looking for a spiritual solution. None knew with certainty what was happening. They were simply following an intuition, or perhaps a louder voice, speaking through the silence." Padre Pio used to say that clothing was a form of prayer, that what we choose to cover our body has to reflect what we want to grow in the soul. And although his words were said more than half a year ago century, its echo continues to touch hearts that seek relief, healing, and direction. These testimonies do not seek to convince anyone. They are not dogmas. They are called personal to discernment, signs in half of modern noise that invites us to look beyond of the mirror and within us themselves, because sometimes changing the external can be the first step to transforming the eternal. If red can attract disorder, what colors then can open paths toward peace, the healing and the inner harmony? Padre Pio not only warned about the hidden dangers in certain shades, but also recommended specific colors that, according to he, raised the spiritual vibration, favored the prayer, and they strengthened the soul against attacks invisible. White, to begin with, was seen as a symbol of purity, dedication, and connection with the divine. The saints, the angels, and the redeemed in the apocalypse, they wear white. Wearing white is not a fashion, it is an act of alignment with the light. For Padre Pio, the white represented the soul that wishes to be naked before God, without masks or distractions. Light blue, especially light blue, was another deeply spiritual tone, related to the Virgin Mary. Blue inspires tranquility, humility, and protection. Padre Pio associated this tonality with the maternal presence of the sky, an energy that softens the tensions of the world and facilitates the introspection. Many of its devotees claim to feel immediate peace when dressing with soft blue tones. Soft green, on the other hand, was seen as a balancing frequency. Green connects with the nature, with the emotional healing, with the hope. It is no coincidence that the meadows, the trees, and the landscapes that calm us are dressed in green. In the spirituality Christian, green too symbolizes the resurrection, the inner growth, the new life. These colors are not simply pretty. They act as bridges between the physical and spiritual worlds. Dressing with, they are like wrapping themselves with a silent prayer, an intention that accompanies each step of the day. Padre Pio taught that our external elections are a reflection of our inner desires, and that each color can be a key or a trap. And although the modern world promotes fashion as individual expression, Friar reminded us that the true identity is not in what we show, but in what we grow inside. By adopting colors that flatter the calm, the gratitude, and the faith, we are creating a spiritual environment that invites the light to remain, because it's not just about avoiding the negative, but about choosing what builds the soul. We live in an era, in the one that fashion dictates identity. Social media invites us to dress to impress, to stand out, to show off, but rarely to protect our souls. And yet, Padre Pio, he said with clarity, the clothing is not just aesthetic, it is spiritual language. Every garment we choose is a message we send to the invisible world. To whom you are talking to him with your colors. With that, what frequency are you vibrating when you choose to dress? Not about judging, it's about waking up. Because behind the glamour, the marketing and the trends, there is a deep disconnection with the spiritual value of what we carry position. The red, in his excess, can be a subtle trap. But beyond of the color, the problem is in the intention. Do we dress to feed the ego or to get closer to God? Padre Pio warned that many sometimes the external corrupted the internal, and that the wrongly dressed body became a door open to the impure, to disorder, to spiritual chaos. Today, that warning resonates louder than ever, because while the world tells you dress as you like, the soul whispers, dress with wisdom. Your elections have weight. Your clothes also. Every morning, in front of the mirror, you are not alone in choosing a style. You are deciding what type of energy you're going to attract, what kind of protection you're going to invoke, and what message you will emit to the spiritual universe that surrounds you. Fashion passes. The soul remains. Throughout this journey, we discover that the color of a garment is not innocent, that what we wear not only covers our body, but reveals what we let in our soul. Padre Pio did it, I knew. I saw it, and it warned. Wear deep red day after day. It may seem like an aesthetic choice, but in it invisible, it can be whispering chaos, anxiety, conflict, poverty. And when so many people decide, listen, change, and feel peace, relief, and blessing. Now it's not about superstition, it's about wisdom. Now I ask you, what are your clothes saying about you? Are you attracting light or opening doors you should close? If this story touched you, share this video with someone who needs to hear this. Maybe without knowing it, be living under a burden that they could drop with a simple act of consciousness. Subscribe to the channel, activate the bell, and join us in the next mysteries. They reveal what the world doesn't want you to know. Because sometimes the most spiritual thing is right in front of the mirror.